Hello.
I'm Danielle.
And I'm Abby.
I'm the tarot half of this equation. You're the Enneagram half.
I'm really the tech half.
Tech and Enneagram.
There you go.
Because we are going to talk about some Enneagram stuff. So we're trying something totally new, which is kind of like advice podcast style. Like I have requested questions from people on Instagram, and we're going to pull cards, or I have already pulled the cards in response to these questions. We're going to talk it out. But I've asked for people's Enneagram types if they know them.
Cool.
And most of these people did. So I think that'll be invaluable to have your perspective on it.
Yeah.
So let's just dive right into some questions.
Cool.
The cards I pulled, we'll talk it out. Let's see what's up. I've selected questions that a couple of them feel pretty pertinent to the Thanksgiving holiday. One of them does. One of them does. One of them is more time sensitive, so I wanted to make sure to get that one in there. But let's start with Sophia's question. Sophia is an Enneagram 5. Where should I look for spiritual reconnection? Simple question. Where should I look for spiritual reconnection? So I pulled 2 cards for you, Sophia. First, direct response to your question, where should I look for spiritual reconnection? I pulled the Hermit.
Okay.
Is this showing on the camera? See, I can't see.
Yeah.
So.
Pulled the Hermit.
Okay. The Hermit. But I also wanted to flesh this out a little bit. So I drew a card for what is like contributing to your sense that you are spiritually disconnected. Because I think that's also really helpful to like look at. And I pulled King of Wands reversed.
King of Wands reversed.
Okay. So we have this little pair, right? Hermit, how you reconnect spiritually. King of Wands reversed, what's contributing to the disconnection. And I actually think that King of Wands reversed there is kind of interesting because like King of Wands, so like reversals, we can read them in a million different ways. I'm kind of looking at it now, like in its shadow expression of King of Wands can be like very spiritually manipulative. Like it's sometimes like a spiritual leader who has like a real strong sense of entitlement, abusive, like at its worst. So it really like makes me wonder, like, if you're in your spiritual like history, if you've encountered those kinds of people, and if that's like put you off, you know, and if the way that like you still define what it means to connect spiritually has to do with like having some sort of spiritual leader. And if like you're resisting that just because of who you've encountered in the past, and like where the Hermit is like really about finding spiritual connection on your own and like kind of forging your own path outside of leadership. So those are my initial thoughts on that. Yeah. What do you have to say?
I don't know.
So we got an Enneagram 5.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Hermit as a place of like
reconnection. The Hermit is the answer to reconnection. Does that feel counterintuitive to you for a 5?
Yeah, like I would never give that advice. I would say like finding a community, like finding a spiritual community is going to be more supportive than trying to go at it on your own.
Yeah.
But with King of Wands reversed, like, so this is the difference between like talking about an Enneagram type generally versus drawing a card for a specific person. Right? So like the fact that they're an Enneagram 5 could be playing into the reading or it could not.
Yeah, it's true.
Right? Like the advice that the tarot is giving here is much more, it seems to be saying, right, with this King of Wands reverse, that like maybe they were a part of a community, and maybe that community kind of soured them for whatever reason, and they're looking for something more, and so maybe they do need to have a more of an individual approach for the time being.
Yeah. Whereas generally, like Enneagram 5s tend to be withdrawn.
Yeah. And so my advice would be to look for a spiritual community that feels in alignment with what you're wanting. But again, it's like we can talk about the generalities of type, or we can talk about a specific person with a specific issue. Yeah. And those things don't always align.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Very true. But it is helpful perspective.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's interesting. I would also ask, in King of Wands reversed, if you are just like totally burned out, You know, like if you have to hold that King of Wands energy for people in your lives, which I sometimes call King of Wands the captain of the ship of hope, which sounds really dumb, but like, you know, if you're the person who like people in your life look to for guidance, if you have to kind of like hold the possibility for people, if that makes sense, like I believe in you, you can do it. Like if that's always your role, it's like people are looking to you for that kind of energy and guidance and anchoring, that like maybe that's just a sense of being totally burned out and depleted. And that's contributing to your sense of like not being able to connect with your own spirit.
Yeah.
And so maybe then that hermit is more like, okay, well, we need to like focus energy more on yourself and less on other people. So yeah, a couple of different ways to look at that. Hopefully that resonates for you. Okay, let's move on. Here is a type 2 named Sophie. We just had a Sophia. Now we have a Sophie.
All
Whoa.
right.
Okay. Type 2. How do I navigate setting boundaries with family during the holiday season while also recognizing that time with them is precious and soaking it all in? I find it so hard to be present during this balancing act. Oh, type 2.
Oh, type 2.
Well, the card I pulled for you, Sophie, 6 of Wands. And really the way this reads to me is like, maybe you're actually doing a way better job than you think. You know, like that's just kind of how this card felt to me. 6 of Wands is generally about like success, you know, and like feeling yourself and doing a good job. But kind of like inherent in your question is this idea that like, you're not doing it well. Like, how do I do it? It's so tough, you know, like thinking that you need advice on how to do it, but maybe this is just encouragement. Like you're already like doing a good job, and like your awareness of the need to hold that balance is like speaking to like your ability to navigate this.
Yeah. Well, and I think that my advice like to a 2 with this question would be like similar in that respect. I was like, okay, well, why are you assuming that holding boundaries means you aren't acknowledging that time with these people is precious? Like that's like looking at that like kind of flawed belief that you have, right? Which is apparent in the way you spoke about this issue.
Right. That these are
somehow different. Like they're somehow like, you know, in conflict with each other.
Yeah.
I think it's important to look at like actually the only way for you to acknowledge and be present to this precious time you have with these people is actually to set boundaries with them. We were at Barnes & Noble yesterday, and I was like flipping, they had the Brené Brown book, The Atlas of the Heart.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, you know, leafing through it.
I have that book, by the way.
Really? We do?
Yeah,
Where
I bought it. I don't know, somewhere. We have
I've never opened it here
books
in the house, but I opened it at Barnes & Noble. And I was flipping through, and there was like this like big full page like quote that said like, boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me at the same time. And I was like, that's real. I don't know who, Brené Brown didn't say that, but somebody said that and she quoted them. And I thought that was a really astute observation, right? That like you ignoring your own boundaries does not serve you or the other person. And so like you are absolutely like the only way for you to really show up in these situations with family, all these sorts of things is actually to hold boundaries. That's the only way that you can have a right relationship with them. Otherwise you are fully in your type and you're not present to what's happening.
Right. Yeah. So the way that you're talking about it, then the 6 of Wands kind of becomes like centering your own needs, like in some ways.
Yeah. And like, you know, the boundaries in a lot of ways when I work with 2s, I like to talk about how boundaries are kind of a necessity. They're kind of the prerequisite for any sort of real present and valuable interaction with the people that you love.
Right. Yeah. They are the container that you build in which you can be present.
Yeah. And it's like you think that you're being loving and present and attentive, but really you're just playing out your type. And type is never present.
Yes.
Like type is always autopilot. Like if you are operating from this place, you're operating from a state of sleep.
Yeah.
And, you know, as Gurdjieff would put it.
I really like that. I like sometimes I think of Six of Wands as like it's a card of like having a platform, you know? And so I like this idea, like boundaries, container, like boundaries are a platform upon which like you put yourself so that your family can see you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And really, if they can't see you, are you there?
Yeah. Are you showing up?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay. Now we have an Enneagram 3 wing 2 now. Okay. So we still got some of those 2 vibes going on in this question, but they're type 3. How can I better recognize the difference between my own voice and values and others' voices and values? Okay.
My immediate response is
Just wait.
Okay.
So
I'm curious what you're going to say about this card.
Well, I parsed your question into 2 parts, right? One is, why is it that they feel indistinguishable? Like, why do your voice and values feel indistinguishable from everyone else's? Okay. Because I think just like we looked at spiritual disconnection alongside the need for connection, this is kind of similar. I like to tease these questions apart. I think it's more helpful. Okay. So why does your voice and your values feel indistinguishable from other people's? I pulled 9 of Swords. Okay. 9 of Swords is noisy. Like, it's not just about anxiety and fear, which is, you know, a big part of this card, but it's also about noise and like being in a cacophony and you can't hear yourself.
I think anxiety for a lot of people is noise.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. But like, to me, this is like you and like everyone else's stuff and what you think they're expecting of you and what you know, your assumptions. But yeah, it's just that noise. Yeah. So it feels really noisy, right? Okay. And then so if you've got this cacophony going on, how do you learn to recognize your own voice? Like, how do you start to tease that apart? And I pulled 3 of Cups. Okay. So let's talk about, first I want you to be like, what's your immediate response? Because I want to see how they like potentially align with what I was going to say about 3 of Cups alongside this 9 of Swords. But so you go first.
Well, I mean, all discernment, right? So what you're asking is like, how do I discern between what I really want and what I've taken on from other people? Which if we're to like broaden this whole picture out, like you're taking it from a very 3 perspective. If we were to like look at it from all types perspective, it's the same kind of discernment. It is the question of what is type and what is real. Or what is type and what is my essence, you know, or higher knowing, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. And that discernment happens through practice, right? Through spiritual contemplative practices. That is your answer. How do you do this? Well, you practice. You meditate. You do breath work, you do body work, movement, right? Like you get in touch with yourself and you create the space necessary, right? To actually hear the differences and feel the differences between what is coming from your essence and what is coming from type. Or the way you phrased it, what is, you know, coming from your own voice versus the voices of other people. Yeah. So that would be my response from an Enneagram standpoint.
Yeah. What I was like thinking of this move from like 9 to 3 is because like we're moving from like all this noise, right, into this energy that feels a lot more expansive. But like what this 3 made me think was like, first of all, our own voice and our own values and needs and things are not singular. You know, it's not like you're going to just land on the thing that's like this one note that you can identify as yours. It's like we do contain multitudes, right? And so I think that 3 of Cups is kind of in some ways asking you to acknowledge that, like that there isn't going to be, you're not just going to land on one thing. It's not going to be one voice, you know, but it's learning to like, okay, I do have like competing voices and competing needs within me that don't necessarily just belong to other people. It's like, there's also tension within myself. And so like learning to like, I think, accept that, you know, that there's always going to be a multitude that you're going to have to reckon with and reconcile. I think that's part of it. But also like Three of Cups, you know, it can be about like our peers and our friends and those people close to us. And, you know, I don't think it's necessarily like always in our best interest to just be like, oh, I'm only going to listen to myself and I'm not going to listen to other people. But it's like, whose voices and values do you want to take into consideration when you're like making decisions? So like pick out the people who you really do value and who are closest to you and that you love, and like let those voices influence you. That's fine.
Yeah.
So I think it's about prioritizing and parsing those out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that that's actually really great advice, that like you can't jump from like hearing all of the crap to just hearing your own voice.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of steps in between, and a lot of times, especially for threes, because they're assertive types and they're a lot more outwardly focused, they're assertive and an image type. It can actually be easier to like identify, oh, you know, these are the people that I actually want to be listening to. These are the people whose influence I appreciate and want in my life. These are the people I want to be most like when I think about who I want to grow into, right? Not from the, you know, the kind of capitalistic rat race sort of way that threes can get kind of wrapped up. Oh, I want to be like them. I want to be successful like them, or I want to whatever. There's, you know, a lot of people can identify pretty easily that like, oh, these are my core people.
Yeah.
And so kind of bringing down the noise from this cacophony in Nine of Swords of like everybody's competing ideas to like, actually, these are my core people. What do they think? And how does that feel?
Yeah.
You know, with what I'm coming up against. And I think that that's actually a really helpful kind of in-between step that like, I can't zero in completely on my like voice or needs right now, so I'm gonna use kind of my core group of people as a proxy of some sort that can help lead me back towards myself.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that. I also think it's interesting, okay, that we've pulled a 9 and a 3, which is like, you're a type 3, so you're on that triangle in the Enneagram. So like you have access of what happens when a 3 moves to 9? I can't remember.
It's their refuge space.
Okay. So meaning in some other Enneagram language they would use
stress or disintegration.
Right. So that's really interesting to see this as like a point of, like, I don't want to use the word weakness, but I mean
contention, maybe.
Yes. Let's like, it is like the energy that you're going to retreat to 9 space when you're feeling super stressed out. So I think that's interesting to see. And then we've got 3, which is like a little bit more expansive for you. Yeah. Like more of a seat of power. So that's interesting. Yeah. That stuff comes up. Okay. First of all, how much time do we have left? We have like a little bit of a crunch. We've got more than 10 minutes. Yeah. Okay. So we only have one more question. Which I have not pulled a card for yet because I tried and it was stressing me out. I was like, oh, I can't feel this. So we're just going to pull it now. We're going to pull it now. I'm going to read this question. We're going to pull the card. We're going to run with it. Okay. I feel disconnected. Oh, this is Tammy. Okay. I feel disconnected from my space. We're spending our first holidays in paradise, quote unquote. I cannot roll my eyes further back every time I hear that. Military life has brought us to Hawaii, where I am jumping through all kinds of hoops to manage the mental and social health of my 2 teens here. I feel like I have completely hit the pause button in my own being. How do I connect with the lava rock we live on and find my place here? Am I even in the right place? Oh, I know. It's like a...
Do we have a type or no?
No, we do not.
Okay.
We do not. So this is like a heavy hitter, right?
Do you want to put those back in the deck? Let's use a full deck.
Yeah, I'll just use this one. I'm going to use the Pagan Otherworlds. Okay. So there's like 3 questions here. So we're going to there's really 3 questions here, but then there's an unspoken question. Like your questions are about connecting with place, right? But then you also say that you feel like you've completely hit the pause button in your own being. So it's really about connecting back with yourself. Yeah. Like that's what I truly think.
And I just want to go off and answer like the last question, like, am I even in the right place? Well, it sounds like you don't really have a choice. And
well, that's true. Because if your military stuff has brought you here, there is like a sense of, well,
and I mean, like there's always a choice, right? Like you could just leave. But I think that when we find ourselves in these positions, right, like we've made decisions and we've made choices that we know are right for us, that then lead us to places that we are unsure of, right? So maybe you're the one in the military, or maybe it's your spouse, and you chose to be with this person, or you chose to be in the military, or whatever it is, right? Like you made a choice that is right for you, and then it leads to something that you're very unsure of. I don't think that's like, I don't think that you're in the wrong place. I think it's a matter of intentionally choosing the place that you're in.
I totally agree. And I think that when we have a question like this, like, is this even where I'm supposed to be, right? Which I hear variations on that kind of question all the time. Or is this relationship the right one for me? Whatever. Like I never answer questions like that exactly, because then we're looking for a yes or a no. And I don't think that's helpful. So how I like to reframe it is, what is the value of this experience for me? So I think we could start with that. And I think we'll end up pulling 2 cards, right? So one for, what is the value of you being in Hawaii now at this point in your life? Because there absolutely is going to be value in it. Like, even if it's a difficult learning experience, okay, that's still valuable. So we'll pull a card for that. And then we'll pull a card for just, how do you reconnect with yourself? Because it seems like that's really the core of this. Yeah. Okay. So what is the value for Tammy in being in Hawaii? King of Wands. Interesting. Okay. Well, I pulled this a little bit earlier, and we were talking about how I sometimes reference it as captain of the ship of hope. And I actually really think that King of Wands is the card that best represents mothers and motherhood. And so you're saying that you are, doing all this work with your teenagers and really having to like encourage and manage them through what sounds like a difficult time. And so King of Wands to me really like speaks to that experience. Like this is a time for you to really like root into that role and grow in it as like a parent who really has to like do that work of uplifting and encouraging and infusing your children with hope. Like that's a really important like skill to have, and to like show them that, even through like really difficult experiences, like you're going to hold that hope for them.
Yeah. Well, and I think when I see King of Wands come up, like, I think it's interesting, like, yeah, you live on a volcano.
Yeah, right.
Like,
I was going to say the same thing.
There is like this fiery energy that is, if you're talking about connecting to place, there is this energy here that literally is not available anywhere else.
Right. Very few other places
that can come close to it.
Yeah.
And like, there's something about like joy and passion and excitement here that, you're rolling your eyes about like being in paradise. You put that in quotation marks in the question that you wrote. Like, okay, well, can you let this be paradise? Like, can you let this be something that's exciting and enjoyable? Like, can you find that for yourself here? Because I think that's how you then embody, what Danielle's sharing about, like this, captaining the ship of hope. Like you have to find that ship first, and you got to get on it. Like where does your excitement lie? Where does your passion lie? And can you find that and cultivate that more intentionally here in this space?
Yeah. King of Wands is fire of fire, elementally. So yeah, that relationship with place and being on a lava rock, is interesting. Yeah. So connecting with that element, whatever that looks like. Okay. So how do you reconnect with yourself? The core of this question. Four of Pentacles. Well, I kind of wish we were using another deck so we could see that person who's like, you know, holding themselves in such a way where you can tell that their energy is really like contained. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a big part here about like setting boundaries around the energy that you're expending.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
You know what really strikes me about this and about your question and some of the things that you shared with us about like being the mom of teen boys and
well, just teens.
Oh, teens.
Yeah, we don't know.
Oh, weird. I put that in for some reason.
That's okay.
So a couple teens. You know, there is this, we have a middle school daughter. You know, she just entered middle school and is going through, so she's not a teen yet, but she's getting close. She's
a tween.
She's a tween and she's tweening hard. But like there is this, you know, gradual kind of splitting of like the parent-child relationship as the kids grow up.
Oh, yeah.
And I think maybe Four of Swords might be
Four of Pentacles,
excuse me. Four of Pentacles might be like pointing at that for you. Like maybe here in this space now is where you kind of protect your own energy a little bit more and let your teens figure some things out on their own. You know, like they're getting to the age where they have to learn to not rely on you. You know, for their own well-being, right? And in order for them to not rely on you, you have to kind of. It's not like a pulling back in an abandoning sense, but it is like being much more attuned to your own energetic boundaries. And I think that maybe that has some space for you, right? Like as you do that and you kind of find more space between you and your kids, maybe you can feel a little bit more like yourself, kind of regardless of where you are.
What I'm thinking about Four of Pentacles pretty hard is, you know, you're talking about like finding your sense of place kind of in a broader context. Like here I am on this island. I want to find my sense of place here. And like Four of Pentacles is like kind of bringing your boundaries a little bit closer. Like, okay, yes, like you are in this whole new environment, this whole new state. But like you also have a new home, right? And so I think it's about like narrowing in like, okay, you don't need to find your sense of place in Hawaii as a whole, but you just need to like ground into your sense of place in the walls of your actual house.
Yeah.
And also it's like, so yes, your house, but then also even closer to the chest, like your body, you know? So I think it's like about narrowing your circles a little bit about like where you need to like root in, right? And it's not about rooting into the whole island, you know, but into your individual house and back into your body. Like that's your home. So that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. This was kind of fun.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well, we're going to do this again. I already have questions for our next episode.
Great.
So that's handy. But in the future, we will be making further calls for questions that we could answer for you with the tarot. Or I'm not going to answer your questions. We're going to give you some perspective on your questions.
Just don't overpromise it.
We're going to opine a little bit, and you can take what you want from this. But it's really fun. Yeah. I enjoy doing this. And as always, if you would like a reading from me in depth, we can go into these questions for like a solid hour. We can talk it out. You can visit my website, oakmoontarot.com, and I've got scheduling there. Okay?
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.